T was a snowy Christmas Eve in downtown Aspen. Thick, gentle flakes drifted down, blanketing the streets and muffling the sound of the world. Inside, a cozy little diner nestled on a corner street, the smell of hot coffee and cinnamon spice filled the air. Oliver Hayes, a 28-year-old freelance writer, slipped in through the door just as the snow began to fall in earnest. He had no intention of buying anything more than a coffee. He just needed a place to wait out the weather and finish some last-minute edits on his laptop. His dark hair, dusted with melting snowflakes, fell across his brow as he settled at a corner booth by the window. Then he noticed the little boy dressed in a tiny red shirt. The child stood near the counter alone, his wide, watery eyes scanning the room. His lips trembled as he looked around, clearly searching for someone. Oliver stood. "Hey there," he said gently, crouching beside the boy. "Are you lost?" The boy sniffled and gave a shaky nod. "My daddy was just here," he said to wait, "but he's not coming back, just like Papa." That sentence hit Oliver like a punch to the chest. He reached out carefully. "What's your name, little guy?" "Finn," the boy whispered. "Well, Finn," Oliver smiled softly, "do you want to sit with me until your daddy gets back? We can watch the snow and make up stories about the people walking by." Finn hesitated, then nodded. Within minutes, the tears had dried and the two were giggling about man in a bright green coat who looked like a Christmas tree. Oliver was just mid-story when the diner door swung open, and a tall man in a heavy winter coat rushed in, a dark brown cowboy hat shielding his face from the wind. His sharp jawline, intense blue eyes, and the sheer presence he commanded made him stand out immediately. "Finn," he called, his voice a low rumble. Stood up quickly. "Daddy," Wyatt Sterling exhaled in relief, walking toward them. "I turned around for 2 seconds and he wandered off," he said, looking more annoyed at himself than anything. "Thank you," he added, nodding at Oliver. "He's okay," Oliver replied, standing. "He was just scared." Wyatt gave a stiff nod, scooped Finn into his arms, and exited as quickly as he came. No further words, no real eye contact. Oliver sat back down, slightly stunned. 3 days later, there was a knock at his apartment door. He opened it to find the same man, Wyatt, standing in the hallway of his building, still wearing that cowboy hat, though this time his coat was brushed free of snow. He looked slightly out of place, like a man used to wide open spaces, not this old walk-up with creaky stairs and warm yellow lighting. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "Finn wouldn't stop asking for you and I couldn't find any contact. I asked around at the diner and one of the staff remembered seeing your business card on the counter." He paused. "May I come in?" Oliver blinked. Sure." He stepped inside. Oliver motioned toward the small dining table. "I'll make it quick," Wyatt said, folding his hands. "It's Christmas in a few days. Finn hasn't really celebrated since his other father died. I've tried everything, gifts, trips, even hearing entertainers." Oliver's brows drew together. "Entertainers? He refuses to celebrate unless his papa is there. He insists the only person he trusts is you." He paused. "He thinks you're him." Oliver palled. "What he told me," Wyatt continued, "that you're the one who makes him feel safe." So he cleared his throat. "I need you to pretend to be my husband just for Christmas week for Finn." Oliver stared at him, stunned. "You want me to be your fake husband for a 5-year-old? Wyatt didn't flinch. "Yes." Oliver stood packing. "This is insane. You don't know me, I don't know you, but this little boy only asks for you." That stopped him. Oliver shook his head. "I'm sorry, I can't do that." But just as he opened the door to show him out, Finn's voice echoed in his mind, "Just like Papa." And then Wyatt said quietly, "He hasn't slept through the night in months." That day at the diner, he slept the whole way home. Oliver hesitated. Later that night, he met them again. "All right," he said, looking Wyatt dead in the eyes. "1 week, that's it for Christmas. And no one, no neighbors, no ranch hands, no photographers get to think it's real. After that, we go back to strangers." "Understood." Wyatt nodded. "Understood." But neither of them realized that 1 week could change everything. The wrought iron gates of the Sterling T Ranch opened slowly as Oliver's cab pulled into the long, winding driveway. The ranch house before him was magnificent, built of dark wood and stone, looking strong and warm against the snow-covered landscape. for all its grandeur it felt. Quiet lonely he stepped out with his weekend bag, nerves fluttering. Before he could knock, the door flew open. Papa, Finn ran out in his little coat, scarf flying, and threw himself into Oliver's arms. Oliver crouched, hugging him tightly. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, still adjusting to being called that name. Wyatt followed behind, his expression unreadable. "He's been counting down the hours," he said. "I can tell," Oliver replied, brushing Finn's curls back. Inside the house was rustic and beautiful, polished wood floors, a soaring ceiling with exposed beams, a massive stone fireplace. It was stunning but silent, holding a stillness that felt heavy. "This way," Wyatt said, leading him past a curious housekeeper and a foreman. "I told the staff you've returned from a long work trip. They've been briefed," Oliver echoed with a wry smile, "like I'm on a mission." Wyatt allowed a faint smirk. In a way, as they reached the guest wing, Wyatt's head housekeeper, Clara, sharp-eyed and brisk, appeared. "Mr. Sterling," she greeted, offering a firm handshake. "Welcome back." Oliver took it, masking his discomfort at the title. "I've prepared the rooms," Clara continued. "Would you prefer the master suite with Mr. Sterling or a separate one?" The silence stretched. Oliver opened his mouth. Wyatt cleared his throat. "Separate is fine." "Very good," Clara replied smoothly, though Oliver caught a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Once alone, he glanced at Wyatt. "We should work on our backstory." Wyatt sighed. "Agreed." That evening they sat in the grand living room, a fire crackling in the hearth, going over their fabricated love story, how they met, when they got married, why he'd been away for so long. It felt surreal, rehearsing a romance that had never existed. "Favorite memory together?" Wyatt asked, reading from a list on his phone. Oliver leaned his chin on his hand. "Maybe the time you hired me to lie to everyone you know." Wyatt actually laughed. "Fair." They were still practicing when Finn bounded in with a bowl of gingerbread dough. "Can we make cookies like before?" Wyatt raised a brow. "We did that," Oliver smiled. "Apparently we're great bakers soon." The kitchen transformed. Flour dusted the counters, sprinkles scattered, and laughter echoed. Oliver taught Finn to press the cookie cutters while Wyatt, looking endearingly out of his element, tried to decorate a gingerbread man without breaking it. Later, Oliver read Finn his favorite Christmas story in bed. Wyatt watched from the doorway, arms folded, his expression soft. Fell asleep. Wyatt walked Oliver to the hallway. "He's calmer with you than I've seen in a long time," he said quietly. "Even more than with me." "He loves you, Wyatt," Oliver said gently, "but I think he's not sure how to connect." Wyatt didn't respond, but his eyes gave away more than his words ever had. The next few days blurred the lines further. At breakfast, Finn laughed so hard he spilled his cocoa, and Wyatt wordlessly cleaned it up. At night, they watched Christmas movies until Finn fell asleep, curled between them. What began as fiction started to feel strangely real. Oliver noticed Finn would glance at Wyatt before hugging him. Unsure if it was allowed, he gently bridged the gap, suggesting Wyatt read the bedtime stories or letting Finn pull him into a game of building with blocks. One evening, after Oliver tucked Finn in, Wyatt spoke from the door. "Thank you." Oliver turned. "For what?" "For going beyond what I asked." Oliver smiled. "I didn't know how to fake being a dad, so I stopped trying." Their eyes locked and something shifted between them. Not attraction, not admiration, but respect, understanding. The boundary between acting and truth was beginning to fade. By the end of the third day, the Sterling Tea Ranch didn't feel as quiet anymore, not because of the weather but because of the subtle shifts that had taken root within its walls. Oliver had expected this arrangement to be awkward, maybe even exhausting, but what he hadn't expected was Wyatt Sterling. He was still reserved, still quiet in that deliberate way that made him hard to read, but when he was with Finn, really with him, something changed. His movements softened, his eyes lingered. He knelt to tie Finn's boots without a second thought, cut his pancakes into star shapes, and made sure his nightlight was working every evening. One night, Oliver walked into the living room to find Wyatt carefully helping Finn put the star on top of the towering Christmas tree, his brows furrowed in concentration. "He says this is how you do it," Wyatt murmured without looking up, his strong hands steady the small Boy, he's got high standards, Oliver replied with a smile. He gets that from his father. It was the first time Wyatt had indirectly mentioned his late husband in Oliver's presence. Wyatt paused, sensing the weight behind the words. He must have been amazing, he was. Wyatt said simply, and that was all. Later that evening, after Finn had gone to bed, Oliver wandered the halls. Looking for a glass of water, he followed the faint sound of music, soft, wistful notes drifting from the parlor. He stopped at the doorway. Wyatt was at the grand piano, his back to him, fingers moving effortlessly across the keys. The melody was haunting. Beautiful, something classical though touched with something personal, regret, longing, memory. He played with his eyes closed, completely unaware of Oliver's presence. Oliver stepped into the room quietly and sank into an armchair in the corner, his breath catching in his throat. When the final note faded, Wyatt sat still for a long moment, then he spoke without turning. You play? He asked. Not like that, Oliver replied softly. I didn't know you could. It was my life once, he said, before I became this. He waited. My husband used to say I was a different person when I played. Softer. He paused. Maybe that's why I stopped. You haven't lost that softness, Oliver said before he could stop himself. Wyatt turned, finally meeting his gaze. You see it? He asked, almost like he didn't believe it. Ido. A silence stretched between them, not heavy but charged. Then Wyatt stood, walked over and leaned on the back of the chair opposite him. If this were real, he said suddenly, if all of this weren't just an arrangement, how would you feel about it? Oliver blinked. What if we weren't pretending, if you were really my husband, Finn's other father? Oliver opened his mouth but no words came out. His heart thudded against his ribs. The question wasn't part of the script, not part of the deal. He started, then looked away. I'd say we're getting off topic. Wyatt chuckled under his breath, but there was sadness in it. I'm sorry, he said. I just sometimes it feels too easy too. Oliver stood up gently. That's dangerous, Wyatt. Wyatt nodded. I know. Oliver walked past him toward the hallway, needing space, needing clarity. But just before he turned the corner, he glanced back. Wyatt hadn't moved. That night, Oliver lay awake in the guest suite, staring at the ceiling. Finn's soft snores echoed faintly through the baby monitor beside him. He thought about the music, the question, the way Wyatt had looked at him, not like a man acting, but a man wondering if something he lost long ago could ever return. He had promised himself this would stay fake, but his heart was no longer following the rules. By the end of the week, Oliver was no longer just the man pretending to be Wyatt Sterling's husband, not in the eyes of the ranch hands, not in the eyes of the small-town community, and especially not in the eyes of one 5-year-old boy who now told everyone, my papa came back for Christmas. And oddly, not even in Oliver's own reflection. Each day the act blurred further into something softer, less constructed, more real. He woke up earlier just to help Finn with breakfast. He stayed later after bedtime, sipping tea in the kitchen, while Wyatt worked nearby in a silence that no longer felt awkward. One evening they found themselves cooking together without a word of planning, Wyatt chopping vegetables while Oliver stirred the sauce, their movements sinking like they'd done it 100 times. Finn danced between them, twirling in his Christmas pajamas, declaring it a family dinner night. It should have felt like a performance, but it didn't. At night they talked about their childhoods, their fears, the things they used to love before the world got loud and hard. Wyatt told him about the music he used to write. Oliver told him how his parents had split when he was young and how writing gave him a sense of control when nothing else made sense. You make everything feel manageable, Wyatt had said quietly one night. And you surprise me, Oliver had replied. Neither of them said what that really meant. Then came the town's annual Christmas festival, an event held in the town square to raise money for the local children's shelter. Parents dressed up, stalls were lit with fairy lights, and children sold handmade ornaments and hot cocoa. Wyatt picked Oliver up from the bedroom hallway, pausing when he saw him in a simple, well-fitted forest green sweater and dark trousers. His dark hair was styled softly, a few loose strands framing his face. You look stunning, Wyatt said before catching himself. I mean, convincing as my husband, Oliver Raised a brow, amused. Nice save, he offered Wyatt his arm. Shall we, mister? Sterling at the festival, eyes turned, people smiled. Finn introduced Oliver to every classmate as my real papa now, and no one questioned it. At one point, a well-dressed couple, rival ranchers, approached Wyatt, commenting on his outfit. Sharp coat, the man said. My husband picked it, Wyatt replied with ease, glancing towards Oliver. He always has better taste. Oliver looked over at him just in time to see the corner of Wyatt's mouth lift in a private smile. Later, as the event carried on, Oliver stood by a stall selling roasted chestnuts, watching Finn ride the small carousel. Wyatt came to stand beside him, hands in his pockets. Watching the same scene, Oliver felt him looking at him even before he spoke. When you laugh like that, Wyatt said quietly, I forget what's real and what isn't. Oliver's breath caught. He didn't turn to face him. Don't say that, he whispered. Why not? Because this is supposed to be pretend. But it doesn't feel that way anymore, Wyatt said. Oliver looked down at the simple silver band on his left hand, a prop Wyatt's housekeeper had picked out. Meant only for the illusion, but it sat there like it belonged. I told you from the start, he said. Only 1 week, I know. Silence, but in that still moment as the snow began to fall again and carols echoed in the distance, neither moved away. They didn't hold hands, didn't kiss, didn't confess, but something had shifted. An invisible line crossed and left behind. What had started as a performance was becoming a story written without a script, and neither of them knew how it would end. The cracks began with a flash, an accidental photo snapped by a local newspaper photographer at the Christmas festival. The image wasn't remarkable at first. Wyatt and Oliver laughing, walking side by side, Finn swinging between them, red scarf flying. But the next day things shifted. Regional gossip blog released an article. Is ranching mogul Wyatt Sterling's new husband just a well-planned illusion? It was filled with vague suspicions and anonymous sources. But one detail stood out, an image of a document, blurry but unmistakably showing Oliver's real last name, Hayes. It had been captured unknowingly. When Oliver opened his wallet during the event, a sliver of his ID was exposed to the camera's lens. The internet did the rest. By afternoon, online forums were flooded with speculation. Wyatt Sterling had hired a man to play his husband. Some said it was a PR move, others believed it was a cover for a secret scandal. Then it got personal. A man named Marcus Thorne, now a senior marketing executive at a rival ranching corporation, posted a thinly veiled anonymous tip about Oliver. He had known Oliver briefly from college, just enough to piece together truths and twist them into headlines. Does not love its leverage. He was struggling financially. Before this wouldn't be the first time someone pretty tried to climb their way up. The story spread like wildfire. When Oliver saw his name trending, his breath left his lungs. He stood in Wyatt's home office holding his phone in disbelief. Across the room, Wyatt read the same news from his laptop, his jaw tight, eyes stormy. Oliver was the first to speak. This is bad. It's going to affect Finn, the ranch, everything. Wyatt looked at him. I can shut this down. I have lawyers, media contacts. It'll pass. But it won't, Oliver said quietly, because some of it looks true. It's not. It feels true, Oliver replied, his voice cracking. Wyatt, I agreed to pretend to be your husband. That's exactly what I am, and now the world knows. They didn't notice Finn standing outside the room until it was too late. Oliver's voice had risen. We should have stopped before it got this far. Then came the tiny voice. Why would you stop? They both froze. Finn stood in the doorway, his small hands balled into fists, his cheeks flushed. I heard you, he said, trembling. You said you're not really my papa. You're leaving, aren't you? Oliver's knees gave way as he rushed to Finn. Sweetheart, no, listen. Finn stepped back. Don't go, you promised. You're my papa. The tears came too fast. Oliver pulled Finn into his arms and held him tight, burying his face into the child's curls. I didn't mean to hurt you, he whispered, barely able to breathe through his sobs. I love you so much. Wyatt stood still, shaken in a way he hadn't been since the day his husband died. He had tried to keep Finn safe. He had tried to stay guarded, but watching his son break like that, he realized the truth had come too late. The lie they had built wasn't just There's any more? It belonged to a little boy who had opened his heart fully, believing the family around him was real. Later that night, Oliver packed a bag. He did not say much to Wyatt. He could not trust himself to look at Finn again without crying. I need to go, he said simply, for his sake, for yours. But when the door closed behind him, silence wrapped the house like a storm waiting to break. The fairy tale was over, and the cost of pretending had never felt so painfully real. The house was quiet again, too quiet, since Oliver left. Wyatt had thrown himself into work with machine-like efficiency: meetings, calls, press releases. The media storm around the fake husband scandal had begun to fade thanks to his legal team and a carefully released statement. But the silence inside the house never faded. Finn no longer ran through the halls with his red scarf flying. His drawings no longer included three smiling stick figures holding hands under a Christmas tree. He asked fewer questions, he smiled less, and at night he started waking up again. First, Wyatt brushed it off. Nightmares were normal, kids were resilient. He tried reading to him sitting by his bed, leaving lights on. Nothing worked. Then came the fever. It started subtly, a warm forehead, flushed cheeks, but by midnight Finn was burning up and shivering under his blankets. He tossed restlessly, mumbling words Wyatt could barely understand. Papa, Papa, Oliver. Wyatt's heart clenched. He pressed a cold cloth to Finn's forehead, held his tiny hand, whispered that he was here, but the little boy kept calling the same name over and over. Please, he murmured, his eyes glassy. Don't go, Papa. Something inside Wyatt broke wide open. He scooped Finn up into his arms, wrapped him in a thick blanket, and rushed to his truck. The countryside was blanketed in a heavy snowstorm, headlights cutting through the swirling white as he drove with white knuckles gripping the wheel. He did not take him to the hospital, he took him to Oliver. It was past 1 a.m. when he reached Oliver's apartment building. Snow pounding down like the sky itself was breaking. Wyatt got out of the truck. Finn cradled against his chest. The blanket soaked in seconds. Finn whimpered, burying his face into his shoulder. Wyatt rang the buzzer. No answer. He rang again. A light flicked on upstairs. A shadow moved behind the curtain, then footsteps. The door creaked open. Oliver stood there, hair messy, wrapped in an oversized sweatshirt. His eyes widened when he saw them. Wyatt, drenched and desperate, Finn in his arms, burning with fever. Wyatt. I didn't know where else to go, Wyatt said hoarsely. Oliver rushed forward. He's burning up, Wyatt said, his voice tight with emotion. And he keeps calling your name. Oliver reached out. Let me take him. Wyatt hesitated for a second, then passed Finn into his arms. The little boy instantly curled into Oliver's chest, letting out a soft, broken sigh like his body recognized home. Oliver led them inside, moving quickly but gently. He laid Finn on the couch, wrapped him in warm blankets, fetched medicine and a thermometer. His movements calm and practiced. Wyatt stood motionless in the doorway, soaked and silent. After checking on Finn, Oliver finally turned to him. He'll be okay, he said quietly. He just needs rest and maybe some peace. Wyatt's voice cracked. I'm trying. I know, Oliver whispered. There was a long pause, only the sound of the wind against the windows and Finn's soft breathing between them. Then Wyatt stepped forward. He hasn't slept through the night since Vance died, he said. 6 months, Oliver, 6 months of nightmares, and then you came and suddenly he slept. He laughed. He looked at me like I could be someone better. His hands were shaking. He loves you, he said, and I don't know what to do without you here. Oliver looked down, fighting tears. Wyatt knelt, right there on the hardwood floor of Oliver's apartment, soaked from the storm outside. Wyatt Sterling, stoic rancher, powerful and untouchable, went down on one knee, not to propose but to beg. He reached up, gently taking Oliver's hand, his voice barely audible through the weight in his throat. Please, he said, don't leave us again. I know we started this as a lie, but Finn, he sees the truth, and so do I. Oliver's eyes filled, his free hand brushing against Finn's damp curls. Wyatt held on tighter. He needs you, he whispered, and so do I. And in that moment, more than contracts or appearances, more than press or guilt or fear, what mattered was what had always mattered: family. The living room was strung with soft lights, garlands of pine and red ribbon draped over the mantel. and a massive Christmas tree covered in handmade ornaments and twinkling lights stood in the corner. The scent of roasted turkey and gingerbread filled the air, and the sound of soft Christmas music floated through the ranch house. It was Christmas Day and Oliver was back. He stood near the patio doors wearing the forest green sweater Wyatt had said he looked stunning in. As he looked out at the small crowd of neighbors, ranch hands and their families, he felt a strange quiet calm. Then a familiar voice called out, "Papa!" Finn ran toward him in his Christmas pajamas, a bright red set with little reindeer on them, and launched himself into his arms. Oliver caught him midair, spinning once as Finn giggled. The little boy hugged him tight, resting his head on Oliver's shoulder like he had never left. "I missed you," Finn whispered. "I missed you more," Oliver replied softly. From a distance, Wyatt watched, his eyes never left the two of them. Dressed in a simple flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled, no tie, and a gentle smile that rarely appeared before this chapter of his life, he looked less like a ranching mogul tonight and more like a man who had finally come home. As the day settled into a warm rhythm of gift opening and friendly chatter, Wyatt gathered everyone near the fireplace. Finn stood between his father and Oliver, grinning, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Before we dig into dessert," Wyatt said, stepping forward, "I just want to say thank you all for being here to celebrate with us. Finn is the bravest, kindest, most magical 5-year-old I've ever known." Finn beamed. Wyatt glanced toward Oliver, then back at the guests. "There's something else," he said, his voice lowering a little, steady but sincere. "Some of you may know that this year has been different for us. We've had change, loss, and the unexpected." He paused. Everyone was listening now. "Earlier this month, I asked someone for a favor. I asked him to pretend to be part of something that wasn't real, but what none of us expected was how real it would become." Oliver looked up surprised. His hands froze where they were resting on Finn's shoulders. Wyatt stepped away from the fireplace and walked toward him. "I told him it would only be 1 week, just 1 week of pretending, but 1 week wasn't enough. Not for me, not for Finn." The guests grew quiet. He stopped in front of Oliver, his gaze steady and open. "Because 1 week wasn't enough for Finn to stop calling you Papa, and it wasn't enough for me to stop falling in love with you." Oliver's breath caught in his chest. Then Finn's voice broke through the hush, high and happy. "He's really my papa now." Laughter rippled through the crowd, some guests dabbing tears, others clapping gently. Oliver looked down at Finn, who was now bouncing with joy, then back at Wyatt, his eyes shimmered. "I was never pretending," he whispered. Wyatt reached for his hand, intertwining his fingers with his. "Neither was I." As the room erupted in cheers, Oliver leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to Wyatt's cheek. And this time no one was acting. The ranch had never looked more beautiful. Soft white rose petals floated down from an arch woven with ivy and baby's breath. Rows of wooden chairs lined the path, their ends tied with silk ribbons. In pale green, twinkling lights wrapped around the ancient oak trees, casting a golden hue over the small gathering of close friends, family, and neighbors. It was intimate, it was peaceful. It was exactly what Oliver Hayes had once dreamed of and never believed he would have. 1 year had passed since that Christmas, and now in the same yard where it all began, he stood beside Wyatt Sterling, no longer pretending. Finn, now 6, wore a tiny gray suit that matched his father's. He had insisted on being the ring bearer and the best man. With a small cushion in his hands and a proud smile on his face, he walked carefully down the aisle, beaming as guests laughed gently. Oliver waited under the arch. His dark hair was styled softly, catching the light. His suit was a deep navy blue, simple and elegant. Picked by Finn, of course. Then came the sound of piano, not a recording, not a hired musician. It was Wyatt. He sat at a white baby grand placed under a tree, playing the melody he had written for Oliver. It was the same melody Oliver had first heard that quiet night in the parlor, only now it was fuller, richer, with new notes, notes of hope, of healing, of home. When he reached the final chord, he stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked down the aisle to meet the man who had turned his house into something more than walls and stone. Their vows were not long. Oliver went first. "When we met, we made a deal to pretend, but somewhere between gingerbread cookies and Christmas lights we stopped acting, we became something real, and standing here now I know that every twist of fate brought me to the only place I was ever meant to be, right beside you. Wyatt's voice was quiet, steady. You were never part of the plan, and yet somehow you became the best thing I never saw coming. You didn't just love my son, you taught me how to love again. You turned a house full of silence into laughter. From day one you were real to us, and I swear to spend every day proving I was worth that gift. They turned to Finn, who stood between them, eyes shining. Wyatt knelt, taking his hand in his. Daddy's never going to let anyone leave you again, not even Papa Oliver. Finn threw his arms around both of them. I have two real daddies now, he cheered. The guests clapped, some with tears in their eyes, as the officiant declared them husbands. The three of them walked hand in hand down the aisle. The sun dipped behind the mountains, casting everything in a golden glow, and Finn, little suit jacket flapping, curls bouncing, twirled, jumped and skipped between them, his laughter echoing like music. No more pretending, just